I said I didn't want to talk right now, Meryl. That was the first thing she screamed as the knife was still halfway through the cake I bought for myself. The frosting even had my name on it, poorly spelled, by the way, because I ordered it last minute from the gas station bakery. Happy birthday, Meryl. Close enough, right? I just stared at her, still holding the cake box with one hand, the plastic knife with the other, while she stood 10 feet away, barefoot, arms crossed like I was the one ruining the night. I didn't even say anything before that. I literally hadn't said a single word. I walked into the house holding the cake, saw her on the couch in pajamas, not the cute kind, the I've given up on trying kind, and I smiled. That's all I did. I smiled. And she lashed out like I'd shown up drunk with a clown costume and a marching band. That's when I knew something was off. No, that's when I finally admitted it to myself. I set the cake down gently on the counter. My hands were shaking a little, not from fear, just confusion. I asked her calmly, did I do something? She didn't answer. She just picked up her phone again, scrolling like I wasn't even there. I was half tempted to ask Siri what I did wrong. The air felt like soup. Thick, heavy. And when she finally looked up again, she didn't say happy birthday. She didn't even say my name. She said, why are you always home? I blinked. What does that even mean? I work remotely. That's not a secret. It's not new. I've done it for 3 years. She was the one who used to love that I could make lunch, fold laundry, be around for errands. But now, apparently, my presence was a problem. You know, she added, not even blinking. Maybe if you had more ambition, I wouldn't feel so. Trapped. Trapped. That word hung in the room like smoke. I started to feel like I was the villain in her story and somehow missed the whole first act. She kept going. You're just there? All the time. Staring. Smiling. Waiting for affection like a puppy. It's draining. And then she said something that felt like a slap. This whole marriage feels like obligation frosting on a stale cake. I looked down at the actual cake, the one I bought for myself. It suddenly didn't look so appetizing. I should have walked out right then, but I didn't, because then came the shift. She stepped closer, like nothing had happened. Her face changed. Her voice turned soft, like someone flipping a light switch. She reached out, touched my arm gently, and said, wait, I didn't mean that. Meryl, I love you. Just like that, as if all those words could be erased with a gentle touch and 3 syllables. But my eyes were already looking past her, at the unlocked phone on the couch, the one that lit up with a message preview from someone named Colby. The message said, tonight, tell him it's another meltdown. And suddenly, everything, the mood swings, the bitterness, the fake apologies, made sense. Too much sense. I couldn't breathe. You know that sharp, quiet second when your heart knows something before your brain is ready to accept it? That was me, standing in the middle of my own kitchen, half a cake on the counter, and a stranger's name glowing from my wife's phone. Colby. Who the hell was Colby? And more importantly, what meltdown? She didn't see me glance at it. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care anymore. That's the part one still can't figure out. I used to think we were partners, married, bonded, ride or die, and all that garbage. But now, I felt like an inconvenient roommate who just so happened to pay the mortgage on time. I took a deep breath and asked casually, who's Colby? She didn't even flinch. She actually had the audacity to laugh a little and say, oh my God, relax. He's just a guy from my Pilates group. We all have a group chat, Meryl. Don't be weird. Weird. I wasn't the one getting texts at 8:43 p.m. on my husband's birthday about pretending to have a meltdown. I wanted to scream, but instead I did what I always do. I folded in on myself. I shut up. I nodded. I pretended like her words didn't just slice something vital open inside me, because I didn't want to fight on my birthday. That was the excuse I gave myself. Again, but then she said it. The sentence that made everything collapse in slow motion. You always read into things. That's why I can't talk to you anymore. That's when I knew. I knew I wasn't paranoid. I knew this wasn't about stress, or work, or me being clingy. It wasn't about me being home too much, or not exciting enough. It wasn't about the mismatched energy or the stale routine. It was about someone else. Someone named Colby. Someone who probably hadn't spent the past 4 birthdays cooking dinner and crying in the garage because his wife said she forgot it was today. Someone who probably hadn't stopped mid-laundry to surprise her with sushi and a card, only to be told, I'm not hungry, stop trying so hard. I wanted to ask again. to dig, to press. But I didn't get the chance. Because her phone lit up again, this time with a photo preview. It was blurry, but it wasn't hard to figure out. 2 wine glasses, a hotel headboard, a guy's hand, definitely not mine, holding her wrist. And right there, in bold text, "Can't wait for Friday night. Same place?" She turned fast when she saw my face. I wasn't even angry. I just looked empty. That scared her. Her smile fell. Her fake concern twisted back on like a mask. She said it again, almost on cue. "Wait, Meryl, I didn't mean what I said earlier. I love you. You know that, right? You do know that?" I didn't answer, because for the first time in years, I finally saw the truth. The real, unfiltered, undeniable truth. My marriage wasn't breaking. It was already broken. I just hadn't noticed the pieces lying everywhere until tonight. And what I did next, I didn't even know I was capable of it. I didn't sleep that night. She did. Of course she did. I heard her snoring in our bed like nothing had happened, as if she hadn't screamed at me over a cake, hadn't fumbled through a lie about a man named Colby, hadn't pretended to love me with that trembling voice she only used when caught. Me? I was on the couch, awake, staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. Every time I blinked, I saw that photo again. 2 wine glasses, a hotel bed, her wrist in another man's hand. I memorized every pixel of that preview. Didn't even need to open it. I already knew the rest. And yet, somehow, I still wanted to be wrong. Around 2:30 in the morning, I got up. Quiet as possible, I crept into the bedroom, careful not to step on that creaky floorboard by the door. Her phone was charging on her side of the nightstand. I stared at it for a full minute before I reached down and picked it up. It wasn't locked. That was the worst part. She didn't even care enough to hide it anymore. That's how confident she was in my passiveness, in my silence, in the fact that I always forgave, always folded, always gave her the benefit of the doubt. The messages were all there. Colby wasn't from Pilates. He was real estate, commercial properties. She met him at some business seminar 2 months ago when I stayed home sick and told her to go without me. The texts were vivid, flirty, reckless. But the part that burned the deepest wasn't the emojis or the hotel confirmations or the "can't wait to touch you" nonsense. It was the way she talked about me. "Don't worry, he's harmless. He's like a puppy. He'll pout, then forget. He still thinks we can fix things. Poor guy. Poor guy." I sat on the edge of our bed while she slept 3 feet away, reading those words with trembling hands. My whole chest felt tight, like a scream was building but had nowhere to go. And then, like clockwork, she shifted in her sleep and mumbled, "Meryl?" I froze. She didn't open her eyes, just rolled over and sighed. And I whispered, barely audible, "Yeah, poor guy." I put the phone back. I walked out. Not of the house, not yet, but out of the bedroom, into the freezing garage, and just sat inside my car like it was a shelter from the tornado that had already hit. But here's the thing, I didn't cry. Not this time. I started planning. Because if she had plans for Friday night, then so did I. And mine didn't involve begging, or crying, or even confrontation. Mine involved silence. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted her to feel what it was like to be invisible. The next morning, I made her coffee. I don't even know why. Habit, maybe. Or maybe because I wanted to see if she'd say something. Anything. But she didn't. She walked into the kitchen, still rubbing sleep from her eyes, picked up the mug I made, and muttered a flat, "Thanks," before disappearing into the bathroom. That was it. No sorry about yesterday. No mention of the fight, the yelling, the gaslighting, the text from Colby. Nothing. Just a sip of coffee, and back to pretending the air wasn't thick with rot. She didn't even notice I hadn't slept. And I didn't bring it up. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Not because I didn't have the words. God knows I'd rehearsed them 100 times in my head. But because I wanted to see just how far she'd go pretending everything was fine. Spoiler, she went all the way. By Thursday, she was humming in the kitchen. Humming. I hadn't heard her hum in months. She even asked if I needed anything from the store when she went out for a mani-pedi. I said no. She smiled. Smiled. Like we were 2 newlyweds planning a weekend trip. But I knew where she was going Friday. And I knew who she'd be with. And I was done. That night, after she fell asleep again, a gift she seemed to enjoy more than honesty, I took out a single sheet of paper and wrote the first sentence without even thinking. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my ears, but the words came naturally, like they'd been waiting. This isn't a meltdown. It's the moment I finally stopped pretending you didn't break me. That was the first line of the note I never meant to leave. I didn't write it to guilt her. I didn't write it to win her back. I wrote it to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining the coldness, the betrayal, the slow, suffocating emotional starvation that had been happening for months. By the time the letter was done, it didn't even sound like me. It sounded like a man who had finally woken up after being asleep at the wheel for too long. I folded it once, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it behind the second drawer in her vanity, where she hides the receipts she doesn't want me to see. And then I waited. Friday came. She wore makeup. Full makeup, red lips, winged eyeliner. The same perfume she used to wear back when she actually wanted to impress me. She spent almost 40 minutes picking earrings. When I asked, "Going somewhere special?" she actually had the nerve to smile and say, "Girls' night. You know how it is." I nodded. I smiled back. But when she walked out that door, heels clicking across our tile like a countdown to betrayal, she had no idea what was about to happen next. Because I wasn't going to follow her. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't even going to call. I was going to vanish. And for once, I wanted her to feel the silence. The second the front door closed behind her, I went to work. I already had the essentials packed. 2 bags, not big enough to seem like I was leaving forever, but not small enough to suggest I'd be back for dinner either. Clothes, documents, my laptop, my spare keys, and the one photo of us that didn't make me feel like an idiot for ever believing she cared. I didn't rush. That's the part one remember most. I didn't panic. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I moved slowly, like someone finally stepping out of a burning building after pretending the smoke wasn't real. The lease was in both our names, but the bills weren't. The bank account had already been separated 6 months ago. Her idea for budgeting. At the time, I agreed. Thought it was mature. Thought it was responsible. I didn't realize then that she was preparing for a life without me. Well, now I was preparing too. I left her the house. She could have the couch she never wanted to cuddle on anymore. She could keep the kitchen she stopped cooking in, the bed she turned her back to me in, the front porch she used to sit on with wine and laughter before the silence took over. What I took was mine. The rest she could sort through later, when the echo of her own choices got loud enough to finally bother her. But before I left, I did one thing that, looking back, I still don't regret. I unplugged the Wi-Fi router. Then I turned off her phone's autolog into our cloud storage. And finally, I removed my access to the shared calendar, the one she used to schedule her fake girls' nights and self-care weekends. I didn't erase anything. I didn't expose anything. I just disconnected. Let her figure out what it feels like to open a door and realize the air doesn't recognize her anymore. By the time I backed my car out of the driveway, it was just after 9 p.m. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I drove for 2 hours with the music off, windows cracked, and every breath feeling lighter than the last. She didn't even text. Not that night. Not the next morning. But on Sunday, that's when the calls started. Blocked number. Then another. Then her number. 12 voicemails by noon. And the first one was exactly what I expected. "Meryl, are you seriously doing this? Is this some kind of joke? Where are you?" No apology. Just confusion. Annoyance. Then panic. She hadn't found the letter yet. I knew that. If she had, the tone would have changed. But she would. Eventually. And when she did, she'd know. She wasn't the only one who could disappear. By the third day, her voicemails stopped sounding angry. The first few had fire. Accusations. "So this is how you handle things? You vanish? What kind of man runs away without a word?" Like she hadn't spent the last 6 months erasing me one eye roll at a time. But as the hours passed and I stayed silent, something started to shift in her voice. She wasn't mad anymore. She was scared. I listened to every message. Not because I wanted to hear her suffer, but because I needed to know if she'd lie again. I wanted to see if she'd finally admit the truth. But all she kept saying was, "Please call me. Please. You're freaking me out. This isn't like you." That part made me laugh. This isn't like you. As if she ever noticed what I was really like. As if she hadn't spent the last year reducing me to a background hum in her own life. She couldn't describe me beyond Meryl's nice. Quiet. He helps with the dishes. That's who I'd become to her. Helpful. Not loved. Not wanted. Just convenient. Well, now I was inconvenient. Now I was gone. And that note she still hadn't mentioned? I knew exactly when she found it. Because voicemail number 12 was different. It came at 2:17 a.m. Her voice was shaking. I could hear her pacing by the echo, like she was walking in circles around the kitchen, maybe holding that folded paper, maybe rereading the words I bled onto the page 3 nights earlier. Meryl, I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know you felt like that. I just thought. She trailed off. Dead air. A sniff. Then, I didn't mean for you to see those texts. There it was. Not, I didn't do anything. Not, there's no Colby. Just, I didn't mean for you to see. She'd built an entire house of lies, and now the windows were finally cracked wide open, letting her own words scream back at her. She hung up before the voicemail cut off. And still, I didn't respond. I stayed quiet, because I realized something sickeningly powerful. Silence hurts louder than shouting ever could. She was unraveling, voicemail by voicemail, hour by hour. And I hadn't even started the real part yet. Because Colby? He wasn't just some abstract stranger anymore. I'd done my research, and what I learned next about him, and her, would change everything. So here's what I didn't expect. After days of disappearing, of silence, of hearing her unravel through voicemails and late-night texts that I refused to answer, I finally did something I hadn't done since this all started. I opened my laptop. Not to write her back, not to check our shared accounts. I opened it because I wanted to know who Colby really was. Not just a name, not just a wrist and a photo. I needed more. She had once tagged him in a story months ago, back when I didn't care enough to notice. He was some business guy, real estate and consulting, fancy-sounding title with no real meaning. But with a name like his and a little reverse image searching, it didn't take long to find his LinkedIn, his company, his face. And right there on the sidebar of one of his recent profile photos, barely visible, but enough to punch a hole in my chest, was her. Trina, my wife, standing beside him at a networking mixer in Nashville, wearing my blazer, the one I loaned her that weekend because she said it looked cute, oversized. She was holding a drink, smiling like she wasn't married, like I didn't exist. That was 2 months ago. That was before the gaslighting, before the outbursts, before the text about the meltdown. She'd already started erasing me back then. But here's the part that shattered what little numbness I had left. Colby was married too. Not just married, publicly, as in, wife in bio, wedding anniversary posts, 2 golden retrievers level married. And guess who found out recently? His wife. I didn't reach out to her. I didn't need to, because she reached out to me. At first, I thought it was spam. Some random Facebook message request from a woman named Tessa. But then I opened it. Short. To the point. Chilling. Hey, I think your wife and my husband are sleeping together. If I'm wrong, I'll delete this and never bother you again. But I don't think I'm wrong. My hands were shaking. Not because it hurt, but because someone else finally saw it too. We messaged for hours. Compared dates, times, photos. And it all lined up. The hotel she lied about being too tired to go to with me? She went the next night with Colby. The weekend she claimed she was visiting her sister in Phoenix? She flew to New Orleans and met him for a real estate expo. They weren't even discreet. They thought we were too dumb, too loyal, too nice to ever notice. And maybe we were, but not anymore. Because Tessa had already filed, and she offered to send me screenshots, ones my wife had deleted from her end. I told her no. I didn't want to see my wife in another man's arms again. I'd seen enough. Instead, I told her exactly one thing. Let's make sure they never see us coming. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because I had a plan, but because for once, she was the one being watched. The last message she ever sent me came exactly 11 days after I disappeared. It just said, "Can we talk?" No explanation, no apology, no details. And by then, I had nothing left to give her. I didn't answer. I didn't even open it. I left it there, just like she'd left my birthday cake untouched and my heart in limbo for months. The difference was, I learned to live without her. The best part? I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to blow up her world. Life had already taken care of that for me. Tessa, Colby's wife, served him divorce papers during a dinner meeting at his firm. The fallout was immediate. According to her, Trina showed up at Colby's apartment the next night, only to be told he wasn't looking for anything serious. Imagine that, wrecking a marriage for a man who thought she was temporary. I'll be honest, when Tessa told me that, I didn't feel glee. I didn't feel triumph. I felt free, because somewhere in all this chaos, I realized something she never did. Loyalty isn't weakness. Gentleness isn't failure. And disappearing wasn't giving up, it was choosing peace. I moved in with my brother for a while after I left. Spent some nights sleeping on a lumpy couch, working remote, eating cold Chinese takeout, trying to figure out what came next. And slowly, like a fog lifting, I started remembering who I was before she shrunk me down to a doormat with a paycheck. I got back into hiking, bought myself a proper used car, signed up for one of those adult intro guitar classes, even joined a low-key trivia team at a dive bar where nobody knew I was the guy who used to cry in grocery store parking lots. And somewhere between laughing again and learning how to be alone without being lonely, I met someone. I didn't expect it. I wasn't looking. But there she was, just a kind, quiet person who didn't need me to prove anything. She listened. She asked about my favorite movies. She never made me feel like I was too much for having feelings. It's not some fairy tale ending, but it's real. It's slow. It's gentle. It's honest. Trina, on the other hand, I heard through a mutual friend she's figuring herself out. She tells people I left her without warning, that I was too sensitive, that I overreacted. That's fine. She can tell whatever version she needs to survive in. But I know the truth. And so does she. Every time she reaches for her phone and realizes I'm not coming back. Not to talk. Not to fight. Not to fix it. She burned the bridge. I learned how to swim. And I never looked back.